heard about using sound on a body or on a horse and wondered, how could that possibly help my horse? Many horse owners first encounter sound therapy through maybe a tuning fork you've seen someone use, or some sort of vibration or frequency based tool, or maybe even sound bowls. But they have no clear sense of what these are meant to influence and why they're used at all. So, in this final episode of our Foundation series, we're going to talk about sound as a practical tool for working with acupuncture points, fascia, and the nervous system. I'll explain what sound is really doing when it's applied to the body, what kind of problems it's most useful for, and how it fits into a broader approach to regulation and healing. By the end, you'll understand why sound can matter for pain, tension, movement, and recovery, even if you've never used it or seen it used before. So most of the time when people talk about sound and healing, it often gets framed in a way that makes clinicians a little uncomfortable. So it can drift quickly into vibration as some sort of magic or frequency as a cure. And that's not what I want to talk about today. And it's not that I want to throw that out the window and say that's not possible, but as always, I try and keep this podcast a little bit more about the science and a little less about the woo. Although a lot of what holistic practitioners do can look like woo. So while I know that there's things that medicine cannot explain yet, what I want to share with you is what we actually do know. What I'm interested in is a much more grounded question. What does sound actually do to the nervous system and the body? And under what conditions can that lead to real, durable change? At the most basic level, sound is a mechanical pressure wave. It's physical. It enters the body through the ear, through the skin, through the tissues, and it produces two kinds of effects that we can study very clearly. One is sensory input to the nervous system. The other is mechanical vibration of tissues. Everything that follows comes from those two known facts. On the nervous system side, the evidence is very strong that sound can alter brain states. Auditory input directly influences the reticular activating system, the limbic system, and autonomic tone. That's why heart rate, breathing, cortisol, and vagal activity change measurably with different rhythms, volumes, and patterns of sound. So slow, rhythmic sound reliably shifts the system toward parasympathetic dominance. It takes the horse out of the flight and fight response. Fast, irregular, or loud sound does the opposite. This is not controversial physiology. This is the same biology behind music therapy, behind how lullabies calm infants, and behind how certain sounds heighten alertness or anxiety. And this matters because nervous system state determines almost everything about how the body behaves. It determines baseline muscle tone. It determines pain thresholds. It determines coordination, learning, and how easily movement patterns can change. So when sound shifts the system towards safety and downregulation, muscle tone drops, guarding reduces, and the body becomes temporarily more adaptable. This is one of the most consistent ways sound influences the body, not by changing tissues directly, but by changing the state of the system that actually controls those tissues. On the structural side, the evidence is more specific, albeit a little more limited, but it's still very real. Mechanical vibration influences mechanicotransduction, the process by which a cell converts mechanical input into biochemical signaling. So bone cells, tendon cells, cartilage cells, and fibroblasts all respond to oscillatory input by altering things like gene expression, matrix production, and inflammatory signaling. That's why low-intensity vibration therapy has been studied for things like bone density, tendon healing, and muscle activation. Frequency, amplitude, and duration matter enormously, and studies have shown that random sound actually does nothing. It's targeted vibration within specific ranges that can influence tissue biology. There's also good evidence that vibration alters the properties of fascia. Fascia is highly responsive to repeating rhythms. Slow, rhythmic vibration reduces cross-linking, improves hydration, and changes the viscoelastic behavior, at least transiently. This is part of the mechanism behind percussive therapy, vibration platforms, and certain manual techniques. If you've ever seen Tui Na, you'll see a lot of these are used in that modality. And this is basically connective tissue biology. So where sound becomes most powerful clinically is where these two effects meet. So clinically, this is why sound is most useful in very specific situations. It's especially helpful for horses with high baseline tension, high anxiety, hypervigilance, chronic guarding, pain sensitization, and long-standing movement patterns that don't change easily with hands, with body work, or with exercise. It is also useful when working with areas that are difficult to access mechanically, or when the nervous system is too reactive to tolerate deeper work. In practice, sound is usually applied through tuning forks, vibration devices, or frequency-based tools placed on specific points or along fascial pathways with the goal of shifting regulation first and then allowing movement and tissue to change second. The value is not in the tool itself, but in creating a state in which the system becomes more adaptable to change. And that's the reason why I wanted to include it in this foundation series, because a lot of what holistic medicine is just setting the horse up for the changes the body inherently knows how to do. For instance, sound becomes most powerful because it changes the conditions under which the structure can change. So sound changes brain states. Brain states change muscle tone. They change guarding, posture, and movement. And movement is the primary driver of long-term structural adaptations. This is why we're always talking about neuroplasticity, and we're always talking about movement and structure and function, and how we can train our horses to move better if we can change how they use their body. And sound is just another aspect of this. Sound changes the conditions under which structure can change. So sound creates a nervous system state in which movement can reorganize, where guarding can release, and where tissues can be loaded differently over time. So structural changes become movement changes. And sound is one of the ways we can influence that process.
If you're serious about keeping your horse strong, sound, and thriving long term, I want to invite you to join me in the Hale and Hardy Horse Collective. It's my step-by-step framework for holistic care, for soundness, resilience, and long-term performance. You can learn more at halehardyhorses.com/collective. So that's HALEHEARTY horses.com/collective. I can't wait to meet you in the collective.
I have used sound both with horses who have needed to drop into a parasympathetic state and also to help facilitate fascial release. In both instances, it has been very effective. I've also used sound to stimulate acupuncture points, but that's been more specifically to support myofascial change through the acupuncture points. And this is one reason sound can be so helpful in trauma, in chronic pain, and in long-standing movement patterns. I have found that sound is an opening and a doorway to allow me to be able to do more with the horse, especially a horse that is guarded, is in a lot of pain, or has been handled poorly and needs to develop trust. Because many chronic constrictions are not primarily mechanical problems. They're neurogenic tone. They are the nervous system is holding a protective pattern long after the original injury has healed. When sound shifts the system towards safety, those patterns become accessible. So the tension drops, movement options increase. And if that state is paired with appropriate body work and movement, real durable change becomes possible. But I want to say that sound is not a miracle cure. It does not replace proper movement and training. It does not replace good farrier work. It does not replace time for an injury to heal. It does not override pain. And it's not a standalone treatment for structural change. It's a regulator. It's a primer. It's a way of changing state so the rest of the system can do its work more effectively. So just as we do not heal horses, but we set them up to heal themselves, sound sets up the brain and the body to enter a state where healing and adaptation are possible. So the way I think about sound in a clinical context is very simple. Sound changes regulation. Regulation changes tension and coordination. Tension and coordination can change movement. And movement over time changes structure. But if you skip the middle steps, nothing meaningful actually happens. And this is why it fits into a larger picture and while it runs through all the work that I do. Lasting change rarely comes from forcing tissues. It comes from changing the conditions under which the system organizes itself. And sound is one way of influencing those conditions. It's not a cure, but as a tool for shifting states so that healing and adaptation can actually occur. For me, that is where sound belongs in integrative medicine, not as magic, not as a shortcut, but as a biologically grounded way of working with the nervous system so that the body can do what it is already designed to do: reorganize, adapt, recover, and heal. One last thing. There are many ways to work with sound. Some have strong evidence behind them and some do not. Personally, I love the calmness that I feel around sound baths, and I love the way they make me feel. I have also had many meaningful experiences using sound with horses. While many experiences cannot yet be fully explained by science, my own experience tells me that sound can be useful and powerful. What I hope to do today is to show you where the science is catching up and to encourage you to explore sound with curiosity, care, and discernment. So thank you all for joining me today. This actually wraps up our foundation series. As we close this conversation on the foundations of holistic equine medicine, the most important idea that I want you to hold is this. All of these disciplines are not about fixing isolated parts. They are about understanding how the horse functions as a living, adapting system. Whether it's chiropractic, osteopathy, acupuncture, sound therapy, nutrition, myofascial work, or Chinese medicine, it all comes from different traditions, but they share a common insight. How a horse moves, how the nervous system regulates, how organs function, how tissues adapt, and how the environment loads the body are inseparable. When one part is strained, the whole system organizes around it. Holistic medicine matters because most equine problems are not single lesions. They are patterns. patterns of compensation, patterns of protection, patterns of overload that develop slowly when force, load, and capacity drift out of balance. As a side note, if you want to know more about force, load, and capacity, you can find a full explanation on my blog at hailhardyhorses.com. The goal of holistic medicine is not to chase symptoms. It's to remove barriers so that the horse can reorganize itself, move more efficiently, tolerate training more safely, and recover more fully. So if there's one principle to leave you with, it is this: soundness and vitality are not something we fix. They are something we support. We support them by organizing movement more clearly, matching our demands to the horse's true capacity, nourishing the systems that allow adaptation, and respecting the nervous system that coordinates it all. When we work this way, we are no longer reacting to problems. We are building the conditions that allow health, performance, and resilience to emerge over time. Okay, one last thought. If you'd like to be on the podcast, or you know someone who would like to share their expertise, please reach out to me directly. All right, that's it for the Foundation series. From here on out, it will be talking to experts in their field so that they can share their knowledge with us. Thank you all for joining me, and I'll see you next time.